couldn't remember the last time I felt him move. And it's like 2 minutes and 3 minutes and 5 minutes, like 8 minutes. And I couldn't find his heartbeat. It's been almost a year since I've uploaded on this channel, and it's time I bring you up to speed on what's been going on in my life. I originally started this channel being a health and life coach. I wanted to bring that kind of content for you. And then last summer, my husband went through a reverse vasectomy, and then we were getting ready to try to conceive, and I just thought it was really great content to put out here on YouTube. Not a lot of people had documented the reverse vasectomy process. I have a history with PCOS, and I was looking forward to recording the food and different things that I did while trying to conceive. And I got pregnant on our second month of trying, so I didn't really have a lot of time to edit and upload the content that I had created in that short time. Because I was overwhelmed with morning sickness for the first trimester. And I started to record my pregnancy. We went on a baby moon, an early baby moon. And all intending on saying, hey guys, sorry it's late, but here's what's been happening. We're pregnant, our first baby together, and catch you up to speed. And right around then is when we found out he was sick. We went to an ultrasound at 16 weeks to find out his gender. Our son Davin was a boy, and where we had gone was just for finding out the gender or having 3D photos done. It wasn't an actual doctor's office. It was a business that they're just sonographers. They just take pictures of your baby. They can't diagnose or anything. So a couple days after we found out it was a boy, I was planning our gender reveal party for the following week. And I had 3 missed calls from my doctor's office before they closed for the weekend saying that Womb with a View, this business where we found out he was a boy, had called and said that they saw something and they wanted to have us come in for an ultrasound right away. There was a lot of urgency in her voice, leaving me 3 voicemails in a row. And I listened to this voicemail coming off of the beach. We were at our beach house. And we had family with us, so I couldn't say anything to Clark in the car right away. So as soon as we got in the home, he went off into one room and I went into our bedroom, and I just broke down crying, not knowing what was wrong. And I texted Clark and I said, come here. He said, are you okay? I said, no, come here. So he came in and I could barely get it out. I said, I have these missed calls. I don't know why, like what they saw. So flash forward a couple of days, they opened up after Memorial Day weekend. And we went in for an ultrasound. This was now the day before our gender reveal party. And we were told that he had a cystic hygroma and not much more than that. The doctor said that we would go to maternal fetal medicine the next day and they would explain everything. We would see a genetic counselor. And in that day wait, we searched it, we Googled it, and the only thing we found was that 40% go away by 20 weeks. We were now around 16 or 17, and 60% have some type of disorder like Down syndrome. So we went into our maternal fetal medicine appointment the next day. Meanwhile, that 24 hours trying to wrap my head around the fact that this may or may not go away, and there may or may not be an underlying condition with Davin, and really kind of wrapping my head around the fact that he might have Down syndrome. There's other things that it could be, but that was the only thing that like I could identify, like I knew what that was. we had the ultrasound, they measured everything, and it took forever. So the doctor came in and basically just said that there was an 80 to 90% fatality rate. And it was just like the floor dropped out. And I remember thinking like, oh, I was worried about Down syndrome, and you're telling me like he might not even live this survive this pregnancy. He gave a couple more details. He explained that cystic hygroma is an issue with the lymphatic system, where the lymphatic fluid builds up on the back of his neck and forms a cyst underneath the skin, basically. And if baby doesn't sort it out, that fluid may build up in other areas, and then that's what's considered hydrops. And that doctor told me point blank, babies don't survive hydrops, 100% fatality. So he left the room, and Clark and I were crying, and this was the night of this was like hours before our gender reveal party. And Clark said, what are we gonna do? Are we just like, what can we do? What are we gonna do about the party? And I said, honestly, I can't cancel it. I have no idea what to tell people right now. I'm not prepared to tell them anything. And as of right now, we found out that he's a boy, and he's our baby, and he's alive. So we'll celebrate that. So we went through with it. Didn't tell anybody. The next day included people in what we were going through. Just a few people. I didn't ever tell anybody the name of it because I didn't want them to Google it. Not good pictures come up when you Google it. So flash forward 2 more weeks, went to 2 more maternal fetal medicine appointments. We're now close to 20 weeks with Davin, and the fluid is getting worse. He has now developed hydrops, and the doctor said, this is your, you don't really have to come in for appointments, but this is your time to say goodbye. And I feel like I'm leaving so many things out, but I don't want this to be like super long. So that was like the beginning part of it. The second part was when I started researching and found stories of babies surviving not just cystic hygroma, but hydrops. And I liked that doctor, the first doctor. He had great bedside manner. There wasn't anything wrong with him per se, but that finite black and white babies do not survive this, that didn't sit well with me because I was finding these other stories that babies survived. So I found out about a little girl in my area that has survived. I met her mom on Facebook, and she told me of her maternal fetal medicine doctor she was going to. So I told Clark, I really want to go for a second opinion. It may not change anything, but I just, this doctor has at least seen at least one baby that has survived this and can't say babies don't survive. So we went to the new specialist, and that's when things changed. The first couple of weeks since finding out, after we found out that Davin was sick, was just very devastating. It was like what the doctor said. It felt like you were saying goodbye. And a lot of people praying for us and reminding us that God can move mountains, but I also knew that he doesn't always heal the sick. I believe that God can, but he doesn't always. And so when we started going to this new doctor, he didn't give us false hope, but had a very different outlook on the situation. And he described that sometimes babies in these situations arc. So they get progressively worse and worse and worse. And then their body has grown enough that they start to like overcome some of the issues, And then it starts to get better and better and better. We still knew it was slim chance for Davin, but I felt like it was like I had just as much hope as I did despair at that point. It was so confusing. This pregnancy was so confusing because, like, part of my mind knew that God can heal him, but that might not be his plan. And if you don't believe in God, like, there's proof that babies make it with this, and a lot of them don't. And so it's just this constant, like, back and forth in my head. I'll probably relive parts of the pregnancy at some point, but to make a long story short, I actually enjoyed the second half of my pregnancy once we started going to our regular doctor appointments with our new specialist. He was just so hopeful. Every time he said, like, I'm not giving up on him. Every week, Davin would be worse with his situation, but he would grow. We had our blood tested with our first doctor, and they ruled out Down syndrome and several other ones. We carried Davin for 10 weeks. And towards the end, we found out that he did have Noonans syndrome, which is very rare. It was a fluke, and that's what caused the issues with the fluid. But during that time frame, I learned, number one, how to live in the moment, because I didn't want to think about him passing away, but almost like in a protective, like to protect my heart kind of way. I didn't daydream too far into just delivering him alive. And so I really just learned how to focus one day at a time and find joy in each day. I really wanted to enjoy the pregnancy. I wanted to enjoy my time with him. So I sang to him. I ate as well as possible. I took pride in that. I played music to him. I wrapped my belly with big earphones. I took lots of bumpy pictures and progression videos. I had a baby shower. That was amazing. And 2 days before he passed, I started to feel really sad again, like I did in the beginning, and I didn't know why at the time. I thought maybe it was because we had found out about the Noonans syndrome, and that opened a whole other can of worms as to what we might have to deal with, what he might have to go through. God really worked on my heart as far as not just being okay with having a child with disabilities, but I got to a point where I actually really would have loved Down syndrome, for him to have Down syndrome. But anyways, I was feeling really negative the last 2 days before, the day he passed and the day before. And the day he passed, I had been crying a lot, and it was 1 o'clock, and I just was kind of checking in with myself. I couldn't remember the last time I felt him move. I thought it was earlier in the morning. I wasn't sure. And I had a fetal Doppler that I could listen to his heartbeat. I bought it off Amazon. In the beginning, when we first found out that he was sick, I would check for his heartbeat every day, twice a day. And then once he got bigger and I could feel him move regularly, I stopped measuring his heartbeat. It was so big. Like, I was 26 weeks is when he passed, but I think I was measuring like 32 weeks. I looked like full on pregnant, like ready to go. So around 1 o'clock, I couldn't remember him when the last time he was moving, and I decided to check his heartbeat. And I laid there, and sometimes it took like 1 or even 2 minutes to find it, and sometimes I found it like right away. And it's like 2 minutes and 3 minutes and 5 minutes, like 8 minutes. And I couldn't find his heartbeat. On my big belly, I couldn't find it. And then at one point I thought I found it. He was usually around 140 beats per minute, and it was like 98. And I thought, it seems like it's too fast for mine, but it's way too slow for his. I guess I think that I just didn't want to believe that I couldn't find his heartbeat. I had a client, so I texted her to cancel. And I called the doctor's office, and of course I'm crying and I can like barely get out what I'm trying to say. And she said, just come in, we'll check, just come in. So I called Clark and I said, I'm just worried, I can't find his heartbeat and it's probably nothing, you don't have to come. He's like, I'm coming, of course I'm coming. So he left work. We both got there within like 5 minutes. And the sonographer said, take a deep breath. We went back into the room. So she puts the thing on my belly. She has her screen over here, over my shoulder. There's a screen right in front of me. And after the 10 or 12 sonograms that we had from 16 weeks to 26 weeks, I was getting pretty good at identifying his little piece parts and everything. So she put it on there, and right away I could see his little profile, and there was nothing. I knew right where I should see it flashing, his little heartbeat, and it just was so still. She said, I'm sorry. And the first thing I thought was, well, now we know. That whole time, back and forth in my head. Is he gonna live? Is he not? Does God plan to heal him or take him home? I'm blubbering more now than I was then. It was just like hot tears just started streaming. I don't think I cried like out loud. So they took a couple last pictures. Clark and I sat in the parking lot for an hour or two, text messaging family. I went home and got dressed up in a pregnancy dress and took my last progression video. And we went out to dinner. The next day I went in for a C-section. And he was born that morning of August 2nd. The first time I got to see him was after recovery, and I was taken to my normal room, and the nurse brought him in, and I had a friend photographer there. I think maybe after you have one kid, your second one, you kind of know what they're gonna look like, or you think you know what they're gonna look like based off of your first one, but I had no idea. He looked like Clark, despite his swelling. He had a lot of swelling on his forehead from the fluid, the extra fluid. He was only 26 weeks and he weighed 4 pounds, 10 ounces. He looked like little marshmallow. But he looked like Clark. Everyone said he looked like Clark. I'll do another video about the whole time in the hospital, but the first day was bliss. It was the best day of my life, because at that point I already acknowledged that he had passed, so it was just finally got to see him and hold him. And then I had him the second day, and that was hell, because I intended on giving him up. And there were just all these people coming in, and it was just too much for me. So I kept him until the 3rd day, and I spent that last hour cuddling with Clark and holding him, holding Davin. And I changed him into a special little swaddle, and I had a little cap that had like a cross on it, and just took a few more pictures and said goodbye. So this is where I've been. And for most of you watching, you probably subscribe to me for something a little lighter. But I have to record these videos. A couple of reasons. One is when you lose your baby, I have found from talking to other parents and being on support groups and stuff, is that there's this need to include them in your life forever. And for me, talking about him is the only way I can include him, really, so far. 2, I am more of a natural leader, and just like the reverse vasectomy, people weren't really talking about it. I couldn't find a lot of people sharing what they were going through. And I know a lot of people do share about this, but there's a lot of people that don't share when they lose a baby. And if I feel comfortable and strong enough to share about it, I hope that there's other parents out there that find this channel, at least the bit of content that I'm going to put up about it. I'll get back to, I will do more health coaching and stuff later on. And also for you, if you haven't lost, there's probably going to be someone in your life that hasn't already, or that you will find out will lose their baby. And I know for me, I really felt for people that I knew that had gone through it, but I really didn't know what it was like. And I hope that if you're watching me share, that you can maybe just learn a little bit about what it's like. Not in a sad way, like I'm not here to depress you, but just things to say and not to say. And I think we can all make the world a better place when we can empathize with people and treat them in the best way possible. And I knew when we first found out Davin was sick, is that there would be a testimony for God in all of this too. And I have no idea where I would be if it weren't for leaning into him. So I share a little bit about that journey as well for me, my spiritual growth and walk with God through all of this. So that's it for now. Thank you for listening.